We often make up reasons as to why our date doesn't call back after the first date. It's a bad time for them, they're busy at work, they got burned in their last relationship, or they're afraid of commitment or intimacy. The list goes on. Most of the time, the reason your date doesn't call you back is because by the end of the first date, they perceive you as fitting an unflattering stereotype. Sometimes these labels are undeserved, and they hurt. But remember, a stereotype is an oversimplified, exaggerated image of a group. They may be unfair in some cases, but people use them to quickly make sense of the world and people around them, especially when they lack specific, in-depth knowledge. On a date, men and women may use stereotypes to evaluate their dates with limited information. Don't let this throw you. The process of trying to determine if your date fits into a negative or positive stereotype usually happens subconsciously, without our even realizing it. But by bringing awareness to this, you can do your part to avoid making unwarranted judgments or being the victim of one. So here's my short list of dating mistakes you probably didn't know you were making, but could be adding up to an unfair stereotype or landing you on the no-call list. Number 1, ignoring social cues or not giving conversational prompts. Everybody likes to talk about themselves, so ask questions. Through conversation, you'll be able to determine how adept your date is at taking social cues as well. And what if they pass the social cues test, but you just aren't feeling it? Okay, maybe you walk away thinking there was no chemistry, but don't give up hope. You might be just right for his or her next door neighbor. Dating is just another word for networking. Open yourself up and learn about something new. Number 2, talking about your ex. This falls into the larger category of oversharing. Anything more than acknowledging that you've dated before and or been married before is too much, at least for the first few dates, and probably even the first few months. There is a point later in the relationship at which you do need to talk about it, and when that time comes, there is a way to give every negative a positive spin. So don't let the word ex cross your lips on a first date. And if your date seems to want to start and end every conversation with talk about their ex-lover, ex-husband, ex-boyfriend, and so on, it's a real turnoff. When questions about your past do come up, which they inevitably will, answer them openly and honestly, but emphasize the lesson learned. Tell your date it was a teachable moment and you grew from it and moved on. Number 3, basing everything on chemistry. Listen, there are multiple forms of chemistry, and chemistry doesn't always show up in the first few seconds of a date. Sometimes it comes in later phases. Sometimes there are other elements that have to align before the spark is lit. And remember that physical chemistry isn't the only type of chemistry. Intellectual chemistry, which is sometimes manifested in your sense of humor, is just as important. And then there's emotional chemistry, being able to open yourself up to another person, be vulnerable, and feel accepted and safe. And have you ever considered the role of spiritual chemistry? When you think of someone with spiritual integrity, you think of someone who is kind, thoughtful, compassionate, and loving. You want to be with someone who has heart and soul. Those are the qualities that will carry you through the good times and the bad. So in dating, patience can pay off. Chemistry can catch up. Number 4, bringing in baggage. This also falls under the bigger category of oversharing. There's something that good old Dr. Phil says about this subject that really resonates for me. He says, when you enter a relationship, you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to contribute to it or contaminate it. Leave your baggage in the trunk and share only when appropriate and only when reciprocated. This is almost never within the first 3 weeks and only a smidgen within the first 90 days. But don't worry too much about date markers. Let it happen organically. If you think you might be guilty of some of these little transgressions on past dates, it can be helpful to do a little digging. I can help you identify those common errors. And don't worry, you're not alone in making them, and the common themes. One of the ways I do this is to conduct exit interviews with former dating partners. I have a very discreet, diplomatic way of asking questions to assess your past dating performance. Yes, it takes a bravely honest person who's willing to turn the mirror inward and truly do what it takes to find love. But I'll be there with support and guidance throughout the whole process. And while I won't give you a dating grade, we will use the feedback to improve your dating game. For more information about exit interviews and dating coaching, visit www.thedatemaven.com.